Everybody, and thanks for attending. And I just want to welcome Matt and thank him for doing this demonstration this morning. A little background on Matt. Matt is a perihilar cholangiocarcinoma survivor who has pretty much turned his journey into a mission to give back to our community. He was diagnosed in 2013 at just 47 years of age. And Matt has undergone multiple resections, chemotherapy, and radiation and achieved a remarkable outcome. And it was because of next generation sequencing, which is in part what he's talking about today, and targeted therapy because of that sequencing or what was found in it. So drawing on his professional background in information technology, Matt has developed Genomic Focus, a platform designed to empower patients and healthcare providers alike. It's funded entirely by Matt, and he's operating on a no revenue model. It's free, in other words. And that, I think, exemplifies his commitment to our community and the wider community. So with that, Matt, could you answer me what inspired you to create Genomic Focus, and how has your personal journey shaped its development?
Yeah, as Steve said, I'm Matt Reidy, and I live in the state of Virginia in the United States, and I recognize some of the names here, but some of them I don't. What led me to create Genomic Focus is exactly what Steve mentioned, my personal journey with cholangiocarcinoma. So I think next week it will be 11 years since diagnosis, 12
Fine.
next week. And like most people, I was perfectly healthy, had no issues, not even a broken bone. And became a little bit tired and itchy, and went to my primary care physician and had some blood work done, and my liver enzymes were through the roof, 10, 20, 50 times the normal upper limit. One thing led to another. I was fortunate in that I had caught things relatively early, and was able to be seen at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, in the U.S. And went through a liver transplant evaluation protocol. But in the process of doing that, I was also told that I was a candidate for resection. So I had my resection done, and not without some hiccups, but things went well. Somebody even mentioned the word cured, which was great. But at my one year checkup, I had recurrence in my peritoneal cavity, and for me, the CA19-9 blood marker was spot on. It was high when I was diagnosed. It stayed high until I had my resection. It went back to normal. It was normal. I got it checked probably every 2 months or so my first year, and it was normal that entire time. And at my 1 year checkup, it had spiked up, and sure enough, they saw something on my MRI scan, and so I asked my surgeon to just go and cut my recurrence out, and he said, no, I can't do that. It's spread. It's systemic now. You need systemic treatment. And so I made a deal with my surgeon, and I said, all right, I'll do chemo. I know chemo doesn't cure, but if you want me to do chemo first, I'll do chemo. And then after doing chemo for a little while, if things haven't spread, you're going to come in and resect it again. And he said, okay, it's unlikely that that'll be the case, but okay. So I did gem-cis chemotherapy for maybe 3 months, not a whole lot. And things did not progress. So I had another surgery, and unfortunately the new tumor was too close to where they reconstructed my common bile duct, and he was not able to take it out without killing me. So he stitched me back up, and then I decided to do radiation treatment and a curative intent of IMRT radiation, intensity modulated radiation therapy is what it stands for. So I did radiation and oral chemotherapy for 5 weeks every day, Monday through Friday for 5 weeks. And that didn't help either. So back in 2014 actually is when I had my surgery. It was January 2014. This next generation sequencing was, pretty much unheard of, brand new. But because I was at this major center, they had the testing performed for me by Foundation One, which was a company here in the U.S. And it gave us some information, but there was nothing in it that was of any value. So it kind of sat in my medical records for years. And so after all of these things that I'd been through, I talked to my oncologist and said, what now? I never qualified for a clinical trial because my cancer was never really measurable, right? It was measurable, and then I had it resected. It was gone. It came back, but it was teeny tiny, and it was in my peritoneal cavity and hard to see on scans. So, unless you have really measurable disease, you can't join a clinical trial. So clinical trials were not an option for me. But my oncologist had just read an article in the New England Journal of Medicine about a trial that was being run at Johns Hopkins University in Maryland. And he said, there's a few cholangiocarcinoma people in this cohort of patients. He said they responded really well. And he said the drug turned out to be pembrolizumab, which is Keytruda, the immunotherapy checkpoint inhibitor, same drug that saved Steve's life. And it had fortunately just been approved by the US FDA for skin cancer in the US. And our health system allows doctors to prescribe a drug if it's been approved for any use. A doctor can prescribe it in what's called off-label format for any other use. So my doctor said, I think it's worth a shot. Your insurance probably won't cover the cost of it. And it's about $13,000 US every 3 weeks, which is a lot of money. And I was fortunate enough to have the money to do that. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And within 2 or 3 months, I was completely cancer-free.
Wow.
Nothing on scans. CA19-9 came back down to normal, and I continued to take the drug for a year and a half. And I was also able to get the manufacturer of the drug to give it to me for free, which was even better. It's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So my story really is, I was stage 4. Ultimately, I had done everything that I could, and I would reach the end of my road. But someone knowledgeable enough looked at my biomarker report, was aware of a trial and a new drug, put 2 and 2 together, and that literally saved my life. As Steve said, I was an IT professional for almost 30 years and have a background in that space. And I retired when I had my recurrence. I figured I was going to die, and I had better things to do with my time than continue to work. So I really dove into some of the more technical stuff around cancer and cholangiocarcinoma. Got real involved with the US Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation, started a Facebook group related to targeted therapies and immunotherapies, where some of you, I know some of you from there. And people started, I started encouraging people to get this testing done because it still wasn't commonplace and still isn't commonplace, unfortunately, everywhere. And that's great. Once you get the testing done, that's the first hurdle. Paying for it is the second hurdle. The third hurdle is understanding the results of the report. Back 10 years ago, reports came out and they didn't have a lot of information about related drugs or clinical trials. They just said, here are your biomarkers. And so people started coming to me, using me as a resource, asking for my opinion. You know, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a doctor. But sadly, in a lot of cases, I knew more about this topic than a lot of the non-expert doctors in this space. So people would email me and send me their reports and ask me for my opinion, and that became a routine thing for me. You know, every week I was in touch with people all over the world. And so I was looking for a way to make it easier for people to get the same information without having to go through me directly. So that's what spawned this idea of genomic focus. And I'm going to share my screen. You know, I think so. It's a website. It's the right one. Genomicfocus.com is the address, and it's mobile friendly, it's computer friendly, both. You can use it on a phone or a computer or a tablet, whatever you prefer. And the design goal was really to make it simple to use for patients and their caregivers. You know, as patients, we have a lot of things on our plate, and looking for information is not everybody's cup of tea, right? For some people it is. Some people are lucky to have caregivers who are able to do these things, and some people don't. So we try to make it super simple, super easy. The whole concept is you upload a copy of your next generation sequencing report, and you can do that in multiple ways. You can send in a nice clean copy of a PDF of your report if you have it, or you can send in screenshots of you know, I don't know if you have MyChart in Australia and New Zealand, but you know, online medical records that might show this information, or you can take a photo of a fax of a copy of a report. It doesn't matter how you get it to us. We can take pictures, we can take PDFs, any way you want. But once we have that information, we pull out your biomarkers and your cancer type. And so just, you know, we're focused on cholangiocarcinoma here, and that's where I got my start in this as well. But genomic focus is not specific to any cancer type. So, you know, everybody knows somebody with cancer. If you know other people with cancer, this is a tool that they can use as well. But once we have the cancer type and the biomarkers, we can then provide drugs, a list of drugs and clinical trials that match your cancer type and your biomarkers. And we provide a list of approved drugs, and these are drugs that are approved somewhere in the world. They may not be approved in your location. They may or may not be. You have to double check and look. But then we also provide a list of off-label drugs. And those, again, my life was saved by an off-label drug. It's since been approved for cancers like cholangiocarcinoma, but at the time it wasn't. So an off-label drug, from Genomic Focus's perspective, is a drug that has been approved for one or more of your biomarkers for any other cancer type. You know, it costs millions of dollars to run a clinical trial in order to get a drug approved, and then a lot of, you know, bureaucratic overhead to get it approved in a specific country. And so for the more rare cancers like cholangiocarcinoma, there's little incentive for drug manufacturers to do that, unless they have a really fantastic belief that their drug is of off-label drugs. And then I think Steve's on too.
There he is.
Maybe not. Okay, we lost our recording for a second, Steve. So anyway, with that being said, this is the homepage. We try to cover, what we do simply, informatively. We've got partners with.
Matt, can we just check that everybody can see what you're showing? Is it Lynette?
Yep, I can.
Right,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
A list of different foundations and organizations around the world that we've partnered with, and there's a getting started section at the top. So at the top there's a menu: home, getting started, trial map, FAQ. So getting started is just very simple. What do you do? Register, upload your report. You'll get an email once it's been analyzed, which it usually takes 24 hours or less to get your report processed. And then you'll get those things that I mentioned: the list of approved drugs, a list of clinical trials, a map, an interactive map of where the clinical trials are, and a list of the off-label drugs. And then you'll also have the ability to share that information with your doctors or other folks. And then one of the key benefits of Genomic Focus is that once a week, once we have your biomarkers on file, once a week we'll go out and we'll look for new clinical trials or new drugs that match your biomarkers, and send you an email. So you don't have to keep going out and looking and scouring the internet and Facebook and wherever else to see what's new and what's happening. So that's getting started. For people who maybe don't have the ability to get this kind of testing done, the next generation sequencing, or they get the testing done and there's no biomarkers found. And that happens sometimes because the sample wasn't good, or they're just testing wasn't sufficient enough to uncover biomarkers. We have a link at the top here to a trial map. And these are trials that are non-targeted therapy specific. So these are, these could be trials related to chemotherapy or other procedures. And it automatically geolocates you when you go to this page. So I'm in the US, so it showed me the US, but if I go down to Australia, for example, and I zoom in, go to Sydney, the numbers indicate how many. As I continue to zoom in, the numbers give way to icons, and the little icons represent an individual trial, and those trials, the icons are color coded based on the phase of the trial. So if I click on an icon, this is a phase 1, phase 2 trial. Phase 2 is orange, phase 1 is red, phase 3 is yellow, and phase 4 is green, just as a visual. But it gives you a little overview of what this trial is. And if you click on this link, it will take you out to the clinical trials database that shows you all the gory details, the inclusion and exclusion criteria, et cetera, for that trial. So a visual way to look and see, what trials might there be for cholangiocarcinoma, in this case, in my country, right? And you can drop down and choose different cancer types. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but if I choose breast cancer, we'll probably see more. Zoom back over. So there. Now we see some in New Zealand. So unfortunately, no non-clinical trial or no non-targeted therapy clinical trials for cholangiocarcinoma in New Zealand at this point. But so this is a resource that's out there for anybody. Again, just so you know. We have a frequently asked questions menu, which just goes through some of the basics related to this whole space. You know, what's a biopsy? What is DNA? What are genes? What's this MSI stuff people are talking about? If you click on them, you know, what's immunotherapy? Just a bunch of frequently asked questions where you could find some answers. And then and this is me, and then my business partner on this project is an old coworker friend of mine who's also a tech nut. And so the two of us actually put this website together. So that's an overview of kind of the homepage. And when it comes time to actually use Genomic Focus, you can click the sign in or register button or the register now button. If you need to register, you just provide an email address and a password. You confirm your password, give us first name and last name, pick what country you're from, agree to the terms, and hit submit. I am going to actually, I'm going to register. So let me register with one of my accounts. And I'm going to say Australia, just so that things pop up there, and submit. So registering is quick, super easy. You'll get an email when you register. And now we're signed in, and the menu at the top changes a little bit. We now have my reports, my results, and my profile. So under my profile is where you can change your email address or change your password or delete your whole account and choose to subscribe and unsubscribe to different emails and things. But my results is where you first, or sorry, my reports is where you first upload a file. So I'm going to click on upload a report file, and I'm going to find a copy of my Foundation 1 report from 2015 and submit that report. And it says, thanks for the report. We'll email you when your results are ready. And so I'm going to sign out. I'm going to sign back in with my administrative account, where you'll see a copy of my report. So this is something that we see on our side. When you submit a report, this is what we see. We see a copy of the report. And then there's some fields over here that we fill in based on the data in the report, right? So I'll choose cholangiocarcinoma as the cancer type. This is a Foundation 1 report. I'm gonna leave a lot of this information blank just because it's not required. But you'll see on my report in this section on the middle right here, the genomic alterations found or identified. There are 7 different markers, right? And I'll put a couple of those in. I'll put MLH1. I'll put KRAS. No, there. So I'll put PIK3CA. That's a common one for a lot of people. Foundation 1 and some other test companies also include, and Foundation 1 does it in their, I'm paging through the report, they do it in their appendix. They provide a list of variants of unknown significance. And these are just biomarkers, gene mutations that they found in their testing, but they don't have any information about at the time the testing was done. So just because they don't have any information about them, you know, on February 24th, 2015, doesn't mean that next week or next month there might be something related to these, right? So we capture all of these as well. So I'll I'll put one of these in. One, and I'll put in Jack one. Okay, and then I'll approve the report. So processing is done in the background. I'm going to sign back out of my administrative account, and I'm going to sign back in as the user account that I just registered with you guys, and it automatically takes me to the My Results page. So if I go back to My Reports, you can have multiple reports in your account. You might have been tested by multiple companies. You might have been tested multiple times at the same company. You might be uploading reports on behalf of somebody else. It would show all of those reports here and what the status is. So this is my current report. I go to My Results again. At the very top, there's 3 buttons to download, print, or email. So all the information in the results you can download or print or email by clicking on one of those. There's a disclaimer here that says, for informational purposes only, blah, blah, blah. I'll seek guidance from the qualified health provider because we're not doctors. But in this white section at the top under report summary, it will show kind of all the demographics of what was pulled out of your report, the cancer type. I didn't fill out the name and birth date and gender. None of that is really relevant. But then it also shows the biomarkers that were found. And then this next section is really the results. So it found, there's tabs here, approved drugs. It found pembrolizumab, which is Keytruda. The drugs are shown with their generic names. And it tells me why it chose pembrolizumab, because it was associated with my MLH1 gene mutation, which is synonymous with microsatellite instability and mismatch repair deficiency. I can click on that drug name and it will pop up a window to another website that gives tons of gory detail about the drug, which you may or may not find useful. If I go to the off-label drugs tab, you'll see a list of, in my case, six different drugs that are not approved specifically for cholangiocarcinoma, but they are approved for the biomarkers that I have. You'll see here durvalumab, right, which is now pretty much the standard of care along with Gem-Cis chemo. It's not approved alone for cholangiocarcinoma, but it's the same drug class as nivolumab and pembrolizumab. They're all immune checkpoint inhibitor drugs. And likely, if one would work for you, the others would probably work for you as well. But it also found some other ones. Here's a drug that's related to that one of my variants of unknown significance. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that drug. So gives you maybe these drugs are good for you, maybe they're not, but it kind of narrows down the universe of what you might want to be looking at. And it's meant to be something for you to research, but ultimately for you to talk to your healthcare provider about. Say, what about these? Because they may not be aware of them as well. So those are the drugs, the approved drugs, the off-label drugs. And then we go to the list of trials, and it found 8 clinical trials. And the clinical trials, by default, the list of clinical trials will be worldwide, right? There's no filtering by location. It shows you the country in this column where these trials are located. Some people have the luxury of being able to travel and go anywhere for a clinical trial. Other people don't. But this gives you, a list of all these clinical trials, what their phases are, what the associated biomarkers are, a link to the gory details again, and a way with these little icons on the left side to, thumbs up. Maybe I can go to the United States, but I can't go to France, Germany, Italy, etc. So I'm going to thumbs that one down. A way for you to kind of manage, and then you can sort the trials based on that column and kind of pop your favorite ones up to the top, or maybe you want to keep track of, which ones I've looked at the gory details about to see if I may, may be qualified for that trial. Maybe those ones you thumb up. Just a way to kind of manage this list of trials. If we go to trial map, that tab, again, it's geolocating me in the US. But if I go back to Australia, it shows me these are the same trials that were in the trial list. And again, I can click on these and zoom in. So in New Zealand, we didn't find any non-targeted therapy trials, but there are 2 trials in New Zealand that are targeted therapy related. The Tapestry trial, which is being held all over the place. And so it's being held in 2 different places. And it tells you this, this is at Christchurch Hospital, and this one is at Auckland City Hospital. So you can see the trials in the trial list by coming in here. You can also go into the settings tab, and if you want to limit the trials geographically, you could say, I want to only see trials within 500 miles of Sydney, Australia, and save that. And now if we go back, there's one trial in the list. And if we look at the map, it should, I don't know why it didn't. Not sure why it didn't. It should reflect that one trial in Sydney, within 500 miles of Sydney. Sydney and Melbourne are more than 500 miles apart, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to look at that. But anyway, there's a way to limit geographically. Like, it should not show me any trials in the US or Canada right now. Yeah, and it doesn't. Not sure why that's not working in Australia, but I'll look at that. So, in a nutshell, this is what you get: the list of approved drugs, the list of trials, the map of the trials, the list of the off-label drugs. And if we go to print that, it basically pulls up a PDF that shows you that information in tabular form. Obviously doesn't give you the maps and things, but something that you can take to your doctor and show them. So let's see. That is the overview. Well, I'm happy to open it up to questions at this point. I don't know, Steve, has anybody put any questions in the chat?